The moment Ethan Reed heard that thin, impossible cry through the blizzard, soft, fragile, and bleeding into the night, he knew he was about to make a choice that would either save a life or destroy the last piece of himself he'd been holding together. Snow hammered the windshield of Ethan's old pickup as he drove down the forgotten county road, the wipers squealing in protest with each icy sweep. It was Christmas Eve, and the world outside looked like a page ripped from a snow globe, quiet, sparkling, and mercilessly cold. Ethan's eyelids felt heavy from the double shift he'd pulled at the warehouse, and his hands stung with the kind of deep, dull ache that came from years of hard work and never enough rest. He rolled his shoulders, trying to loosen the knots, but exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. He checked the clock. 11:41 p.m. Late again. He imagined his daughter, Lily, curled up on the couch she always fell asleep on while waiting for him. He had promised, really promised, that he'd be home in time to watch a Christmas movie with her. Instead, he had spent hours loading pallets for a supervisor who thought family time was an optional luxury. "Just get me home," he muttered to the truck, giving the dashboard a gentle tap the way one encourages an old dog to keep going. The heater wheezed but kept pushing out lukewarm air. The headlights flickered every now and then, making it harder to see through the sheet of white. The road stretched endlessly, a lonely snake winding between dark forests and fields. Ethan knew every dip and curve by memory, but tonight it felt different. Too quiet. Too empty. Then he heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A cry. Not an animal. Not the wind. A human cry, soft, high-pitched, quivering with desperation. For a split second he thought he was imagining it, the way tired minds sometimes played tricks. But then it came again, sharper, urgent, like someone begging the night not to swallow them whole. Ethan slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded before sliding to a rough stop on the icy shoulder. His heart rammed against his ribs. He rolled down the window, letting a wave of freezing air slap him in the face. Nothing. Silence. Then, a cry. Clear. Real. Close. He yanked open the door and stumbled out, boots sinking into the snow. His breath puffed in white clouds as he listened, following the thin wail across the wind. The storm blurred everything into ghostly shapes, but his instincts pulled him toward the ditch. His headlights caught something small. A bundle. No, Ethan whispered, almost choking on the word. He trudged through the snow until he reached it, and when he leaned down his chest squeezed painfully. A baby. A tiny infant wrapped in a flimsy blanket, barely thicker than a t-shirt. The child's skin was a frightening shade of red, eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in a weak cry. Frost clung to the blanket. The little body trembled violently. "Oh God," Ethan's voice shook. "How long have you been out here?" He didn't wait for the answer the world wouldn't give. He scooped the baby into his arms, feeling just how impossibly cold the tiny limbs were. The infant's crying weakened, turning into a faint whimper, and that terrified Ethan more than anything else. "You're okay, I've got you," he murmured, tucking the baby against his chest as he hurried back to the truck. Inside, he blasted the heater until the vents rattled. His hands shook as he wrapped the baby in his coat. He fumbled for his phone to call 911, but then he imagined waiting on this remote road for responders to arrive. He imagined the cold seeping deeper into the baby's bones. He imagined the worst. No. He wouldn't risk it. He sped toward the hospital, tires slipping dangerously at every turn, adrenaline forcing his exhaustion into the background. He kept talking to the baby, voice trembling. "Stay with me, little one. Don't fall asleep. Stay with me." The child made soft, weak noises. That tiny sound broke something open inside him, something he thought had frozen a long time ago. He burst into the emergency room carrying the baby in both arms. Nurses rushed toward him, eyes wide with horror as they saw the infant's condition. They whisked her away, doctors shouting for warm blankets and heated for fluids. Ethan stood there uselessly, his hands suddenly empty and aching. Minutes dragged into hours. One nurse finally approached him with a gentle smile. You did the right thing bringing her in, she said softly. If you'd waited even a little longer, she might not have survived. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands, trying not to imagine the alternative. Any idea who she is? He asked. The nurse shook her head. No note. No identification. Nothing. She must have a name, Ethan whispered, staring through the glass at the frail infant lying under a warming lamp. It's Christmas Eve, the nurse said. You can give her a temporary name if you'd like. Temporary. But the word felt heavy. He hesitated. Then said, Noel. The nurse smiled. A beautiful choice. When Ethan finally went home, it was nearly sunrise. He found Lily asleep on the couch, her small hand curled around a worn stuffed bear. He scooped her up and carried her to bed, but his mind stayed tangled in the image of the fragile baby fighting for life in a hospital crib. The next morning, as they ate cereal at the table, he told Lily everything. Her eyes widened. You saved a baby. I found her, Ethan said quietly. They're taking care of her now. Can we go see her? Lily asked immediately, her cereal spoon pausing in midair. Ethan blinked. Are you sure? Lily nodded with the kind of certainty only a child could have. Yes. And so they went. From the moment Lily laid eyes on Noel, she seemed enthralled. She pressed her hand gently to the glass, whispering to the baby with quiet affection. Noel's tiny body stilled, then relaxed, as though she recognized something safe in Lily's presence. Nurses noticed immediately. Looks like she has a fan, one of them teased. Soon the visits became routine. Then frequent. Then essential. Ethan brought diapers and formula. Lily drew pictures and taped them beside Noel's crib. Whenever Ethan held Noel, her tiny fingers curled around his thumb, gripping it with a delicate strength that surprised him every time. He didn't mean to get attached. He didn't mean for any of it. But Noel had woven herself into the quiet spaces of their lives. One afternoon, a social worker approached Ethan while Lily played peekaboo with Noel. Mr. Reed, we need to talk. Ethan's stomach tightened. Is she okay? She's doing wonderfully, the woman said. But we've run into a problem. We can't find a foster placement for her. Her medical needs, her abandonment case, many families don't feel equipped. Ethan exhaled. That's awful. The social worker looked him dead in the eyes. You've been here almost every day. Someone has to, he replied. Yes, she said gently. Someone does. He felt the world begin to tilt. You want me to foster her? We'd like you to consider it. He shook his head. I'm barely scraping by with one kid. I work long hours. This is too much. I'm not qualified. She smiled kindly. You're more qualified than you think. Noel doesn't need a perfect home. She needs a loving one. That night, Ethan stared at the bills on the table, the overdue notices, the grocery receipts. He stared at Lily's crayon drawings, 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall. One medium. One very small. He didn't sleep. The next morning, Lily looked at him over her bowl of cereal and said calmly, You're going to say yes. He nearly dropped the milk carton. Lily, this is complicated. No, she said simply, spooning cereal. It's not. Noel needs us. And we need her. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Couldn't argue. She's already ours, Lily added softly. You just haven't told them yet. And that was that. He called the social worker. Said yes. Even though fear scraped at him, even though logic warned him, even though his bank account begged for mercy. He said yes. The months that followed were a whirlwind of paperwork, interviews, home inspections, and sleepless nights. But finally, Noel came home. Ethan held her in his arms on their doorstep, feeling her tiny heartbeat against his chest, and something inside him clicked into place. Life became harder. Far harder. Nights blurred into mornings. Work collided with doctor visits. Bills piled higher. But laughter filled the small house again. Noel's first giggles echoed down the hallway. Lily danced with her sister in the living room. The three of them sat together at night, forming a messy, imperfect, beautiful family. Months later, when the sheriff called with news about Noel's origins, Ethan listened quietly. A teen mother, homeless, terrified, mentally unstable, had given birth alone and left the baby in panic and confusion. She had since been hospitalized and signed relinquishment papers. She said she hopes the person who found the baby keeps her, the sheriff said gently. Ethan hung up the phone, turned to see Noel clapping her hands while Lily built block towers beside her, and felt tears prick his eyes. He didn't know who he felt more for, Noel, her mother, or himself. The adoption hearing was simple. Small. Lily held Noel's hand as the judge asked Ethan if he understood the responsibility he was taking on. Yes, he said. I've understood it since the night I heard her cry. The judge signed the papers. Noel became a reed. A year later, on Christmas Eve, snow falling softly, Ethan walked with his daughters along County Road 19. Lily placed a small wreath where Ethan had first found the baby. Noel giggled in his arms, her cheeks flushed, eyes bright. 1 year ago, he whispered into her soft hair, you were a cry in the dark. Now you're the reason our world is bright. Noel pressed her face into his neck. Lily slipped her hand into his. And for the first time in a long, long time, Ethan felt whole.